welcome to this special edition of the Prime Playbook, where we discuss everything around investing. And we've seen a lot of changes in household savings behavior. There's a structural trend of Indian household savings shifting from physical assets like gold, real estate, to financial assets like equities and mutual funds. To discuss this and more, and of course about the larger picture, we have with us Mr. Dheeraj Relly, who's the MD and CEO at HDFC Securities. Dheeraj, such a pleasure to have you with us on the show today. And the financialization of savings has been a theme we've been speaking about for a long time. According to you, over the last decade, what has been the biggest change that you've seen here?
So thank you for having me. Pleasure is all mine. I think the biggest change is ease of investing. I remember when I took over HDFC Securities as a CEO in 2015-16, we used to onboard customers with 38 or 40 signatures, a big form, and to now, and it's just about 6 to 7 minute journey for a customer to complete at their level only, and no paperwork, no intervention from any broking entity is required. That has been a big boom. So digitization paved for democratization of financial services.
Okay. So, just adding on to that, you said digitization is one of the reasons. This shift that we're seeing towards equities, is it, apart from digitization, a big macroeconomic story as well, where people are getting more aware? And is this trend which is going to multiply in the coming years?
So other than the digitization, I think it's a total behavioral shift. Indian investors were really was not able to navigate the volatility in the market. So as and when there will be a small shake-up in the market, they would not digest or stomach the volatility. Over the last 10 years, with aspirations changing, return expectations changing, risk appetite changing, I think there has been a significant pivot in the behavioral aspects. And now Indian investors are not perturbed with the volatility. They are not perturbed with the event-based risk. Like today, we are having a bigger event risk because of the Iran and US conflict. But look, our Indian markets are absolutely calm, and 1% correction is of no correction. That's possible in any given day also. So my take is that there has been shift in the aspirations and also expectations and ability to navigate the volatility. That has also been a big driver.
So, when you talk about people who are now investing into equity markets, is it first-time investors or mature investors are also reallocating their assets now?
So I'll give you a few data points to substantiate first for the matured investors. In last 10 years, guess at what rate funds raised by AIF has grown? 60x.
Wow.
60x. PMS from 2015 onwards, AUM in portfolio management services have grown 23x in last 10 years. So this is about the ultra HNIs, HNIs going to private markets, going and taking risk with the higher, riskier asset classes and so on. And at the same time, we have seen a boom. We've seen in the boom in the SIP. SIP velocity have moved from 8,000 crore in 2020 March to now 31,000 crore plus in January 2026. And these are also from the 10 crore plus account, 10 crore 29 lakh folios, and average ticket size of about just 3,000. So what can happen, from here onwards, my take is that the ticket sizes will increase dramatically. And also, financialization of savings is just on the cusp of exponential growth. And I'll give you some more data points to that. There are only about 20% of the financial saving that goes into mutual funds or direct equities. This is slated to go to 33% by 2023. So there'll be a big shift in the financial assets. We've seen
2030.
2033.
2033. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And my take is that we've been in last 7-8 years growing SIP book at a CAGR of about 1.9% per month, which translates into about 24% CAGR for a yearly CAGR. At this rate, in 2030, we'll have a 1 lakh crore SIPs. Wow! And this is not factored into ticket sizes.
It's been an incredible rise, right? Imagine getting 31,000 crore rupees just from retail investors on a monthly basis. And it's very close to reaching those AUM levels of 100 lakh crore rupees as well, right? We're sitting at 80 lakh crore rupees right now. So do you think this structural shift that has come by 20% in equities and mutual funds right now, slated to go to 33%, Are there some bottlenecks to that? What do you think is missing right now when we talk about the equity story and financialization of savings?
So financialization of saving is one aspect. Equitization of saving is another
Yeah,
extension to it.
true.
I have been talking about it more. Earlier, people were looking at only physical assets. Like if they were looking to invest in gold, silver, they will buy jewelry and utensils and bars and so on. Now they have moved in those asset classes also into financial assets. We've seen that over 24,000 crore kind of money came in only in the gold
The
ETF,
ETFs,
higher
yeah.
than the
Equity
net
mutual fund.
flows in the SIPs also. So this is a financialization of savings. And now within that financial assets, equity is finding more merits because it has an opportunity to give them a higher returns, and people are expectations have also changed dramatically. So my take is that the financialization of savings and equitization of savings, both trends will continue and accentuate. What can go wrong is prolonged period of hiatus in the market or a down cycle. Like last 18 months or so, we have been witnessing a down cycle in the market. Markets are at zero or negative returns. When we look at broadly at Nifty or Sensex level, that's what, if it can prolong for some more time, would shake the confidence of some of the investors, and net inflows in the SIPs etc. can correct to some extent. But my take is that I again come back to the the behavioral aspects, and my take is that they have understood that these are the opportunities and they have to invest more whenever there are down cycles. So let's see how they behave, and if the investors stay resilient, I think that'll be the next level of boom for the equities and capital markets.
That's where behavior comes in, right? The patience that they would have to hold on or to buy at lower levels. I'll come to SIP in just a bit, but when you're talking about this equitization of savings, how much of it is coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities? Do we have some data here? Are people from that region also contributing as much?
In fact, B30 cities, beyond 30 cities, is growing at a 30% CAGR versus as top 30 cities growing at 20% CAGR. So we are seeing more and more investors coming from the smaller cities. What also made viable the democratization of equities is access to the information. I think I would like to give full credit to the entire media ecosystem, including your channel as well as many influencers. Yes, we have had few influencers who were not registered and going overboard and giving wrong advice or uh, you know unsolicited advice also, but we can't rule out the democratization of investing financial assets because of the advent of the media and access to the information. See, I remember 25 years ago, only very few ultra HNIs or institutional investor had an access to the information. One, that SEBI and the regulators have done great job in terms of making information accessible to all types of customers, right from small customer to a large customer. But the other thing is that it's social media, and the media, print and electronic media, have also done commendable job in educating people. And all intermediaries like us have also been on the forefront to work on financial inclusion.
It's been a group effort and it's worked out well. But of
Yeah.
course, as you said, there's more to go when it comes to financialization of savings. Having said that, the biggest question that continues to linger, and SEBI's been doing a lot, there's been a lot of action there as well. Do you think this shift is creating long term investors or short term traders? What is your take on this?
I think if we go by the data that we are number one exchange in the world in derivatives, would show that the somehow people, investors have more gravitated towards the speculative activities. In fact, that also goes with the speculative tendencies of Indians and attempting to make overnight money. But SEBI and other regulators and overall ecosystem have been taking the right possible steps to ensure that the exuberance in derivatives is addressed. And I think most of it is already done. It's just at the fag end of more action. Maybe some action on the weekly expiry here and there could be the final nail in the coffin. But otherwise, most of the action have been done on derivative side. We'll have to read the other side of the story. I think the more and more investors have started to participate in the capital markets through multiple routes. If we see how IPOs have been funded, if we see the ownership of the mutual fund AUM, today 81 lakh crore is the total AUM for the mutual fund industry. You know, and 60% of this is owned by individuals.
Yeah.
So that's something, you know, also gives you a picture that people are looking at the long term investing also. So my take is that if we also include with that the how the AUMs of life insurance companies have been growing, because that's another route some of the long term investor take to invest in the ULIP along with the their coverage. So, you know, yet I believe the retirement planning is not on the forefront. Retirement plannings are still confined to largely, you know, savings through the PFs and
NPS.
old instruments. NPS is also gaining little bit momentum, but not got as much momentum. But my take is that that's another piece. As we are, you know, median age is also lower for us, just about 29 years. As we reach to a higher median age, I think investors will start focusing more on the building corpuses for the retirement and so it's a combination of both long term as well as speculative activities. But just because these speculative activities get out of the proportion coverage, we miss out on the what's happening in us as a structural shift in the long term investing.
So, in that case, since we are talking about there's a structural shift, how do we get informal sector earners to formal investing arenas? How do we reach that 33% mark or 40% mark in the future going ahead to bring more people to the pool, including informal sector?
It will be it'll be dependent on how our per capita income is growing and how affluence is also growing. Today, a large part of population also have limited means and they are in deficit. As I was looking at IMF data, we are slated to grow from current levels of per capita to $3,795 per capita by 2029, and this is supposed to grow at 8% CAGR. If we get to the 4,000 per capita, we will see that more and more investors will start looking at investing a portion of their savings. Indian saving rates are close to about 29%. They are above the global average, though China is at 43%. So my take is that as our per capita income will increase from current to $3,800 level and then to about $5,000 levels by 2047, that's when we see that, you know, more and more investors will come and participate. But as of now, I think we still have a runway available with us to grow from 10 crore odd investors in SIP to easily grow to the 20 crore in folios. And there also, I think what will play out is that those investors who have experienced this route, they have been as of now testing it with the smaller amounts, 2,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees, small SIPs. As affluence will increase and they understand this market better, they know this, that volatility is their friend, and that's when we'll see the ticket sizes will go up. We are also seeing a good response in most of the IPOs, NFOs, thematic investments also, though thematic investments are risky and I won't advocate first time or early investors to start venturing into thematic investments, but staggered investing by far is the best way for them to continue to explore and participate in the India growth story through the equities.
So, Dheeraj, tell me something, because we've seen a lot of new products as well. SIFs, for instance, you spoke about NFOs. Do you think investors should stick to regular products or the growth will come in from newer products? You said thematic is risky. So are some NFOs at times, right? So where will this next leg of growth come from? And what should investors keep in mind while looking at these newer products?
I think first and foremost, they need to look at what kind of time horizon they have, what kind of time they have in hand, what are their risk appetite. If they are looking at just beating the FD returns and real returns and expecting a, let's say, 10 to 12% kind of returns, Balance Advantage Fund works very well for them, and it has got an equity taxation also. And if they have slightly higher return expectation and they have more time in hand, then I think the large cap funds or a multi-asset fund would be a better bet for them, rather than straight away getting into the thematic funds or an NFO. I think we have enough and more AMCs with track record on different large cap and balanced and multi assets fund. Those are the funds investors should look at it. Direct equity only if you are comfortable with the equities and you know you are following the research of a credible brokerage house. Don't try and unnecessarily speculate into the intradays and trading activities if you don't understand the same. If you understand the same and you have a risk management done, then it's okay for you. Otherwise, I think the long term investment is very easy. Mutual fund as a vehicle is very well designed from the tax efficiency point of view as well.
So, when we talk about mutual funds, passives are also gaining a lot of traction. Globally, passives have a bigger chunk. India is still somewhere there. That also includes other parts of the spectrum in terms of products like REITs, InvITs. There's been a lot of push from SEBI as well, changing from hybrid to equity. They're talking about some changes in terms of taxation as well. Do you think we'll see more reforms to introduce products, plus make regulatory changes to ensure that people have at least access or they understand those products?
I think the best way for any investor is to look at his or her asset allocation. If they do their asset allocation right and they timely balance it, I think they will find REITs, InvITs, and some of the debt instruments also equally attractive to have the desired outcome of from their portfolios. So that's one thing they should do. It's hard to do. I think all of us have been at different forum educating investing community that this is the way to go. But my take is that, all asset classes do not find favor in all cycles. Like last 18 months, capital markets, particularly equities, have not been doing well. So in this period, had somebody invested into or asset allocation funds and got exposure to silver or gold and debt, they would have been better off in terms of their returns. So there will be cycles where equities will do well. There will be cycles when some of the commodities and other products will do well, and you always need 5-10% of the portfolio in debt related products so that you can take the advantage of volatility in the market.
So, if you were advising a 25-year-old today, what would your advice be for asset allocation if they are just starting their investment journey? Though I think 25 is late considering the current standards that we are at. So somebody who's starting fresh.
Somebody who's starting fresh has a long term horizon, 25-year-old has a really long term horizon. They can straight away go for equities, higher allocation into the equities other than their cash flows they needed for their expenses. They can go for equities because they have time in hand, and there they can start with the large caps only to start with. Don't venture into an individual stock. If they invest in a basket of stocks, nowadays we all of us are provide the curated baskets for investors to invest also. Instead of putting all your money into one stock, they can invest into baskets, and they'll be better off in investing in those things. I think investors are, where they go wrong, they always look forward for a short term tips and short term calls. I think that's something they need to avoid, and that's where most of the investors have been going wrong. If you invest for a long term, mid to long term, you will make decent money.
That's been the problem. The quick returns that everyone's been expecting hasn't turned out always well for everybody. Having said that, if we are talking about asset allocation being one of the most important things, India is still very emotional about physical gold, physical real estate, because this is something that our older generations have been doing for ages, and they've been passing it on as well. It's a lot of security as well. Do you think in the financialization of savings theme that we are talking about, or equitization of savings, gold and real estate in some form will still find a bigger contribution?
See, gold and silver in any case as an alternate asset had a higher allocation in India. May not be as form of financial assets, but in the normal consumption. Whenever people had surplus in India, they would go and buy jewelry, some biscuits and some bars and gold and so on, and save it as it for the rainy days. And most of them have been proved right. We can't complain. This has been proved to be a great asset class for them. But equity was more, less exposed in the household investments, and that's where we are seeing a trend in last 10 years. My take is that the trend for investing into equity and commodities will continue. people will invest in silver and gold also, particularly if a last, recency bias will
Yeah.
drive that investment for some more time till the time we see some of these commodity plateauing or correcting over a period of time. In fact, many customers are looking at for a copper ETF also, uranium ETF also, and now using even global investing as a route to invest in some of these areas. So, information is so easily available these days, and that excites most of the people. Whereas, money is made in the plain vanilla products.
That is true. But since we were discussing about it before the show as well, that from 2020 to 2024, there was a rush of money in the markets. There were unprecedented gains across sectors, be it commodities, be it equities. That might not continue, and that's understandable. So in that case, SEBI has put a lot of curbs as well. Do you think that has made compliance even for brokers difficult, for institutions as well as retail investors? And that is something which could keep activity and volumes little lower? Or do you think this is just a short-term blip that has come by?
I don't think so. The any regulatory interventions will lead to any kind of negativity in the financialization of savings or equitization of savings. It's only got to do with the little bit on a derivative side, and I mentioned that the exuberance in derivative was to be corrected. So it's these are all steps in the right direction. But in fact, SEBI and all of us have been discussing how we can increase the cash segment and cash turnover, and there is a working group that is working on the same also. And my take is that with the young investors having higher risk appetite and higher aspirations, the equitization of savings will continue to increase and will move forward. We'll see better volumes only in the cash segments in times to come, because we will see more liquidity also coming in. See, today, if you sell today, you get tomorrow 6 a.m. in your account money. You can't have a better liquidity in a product like equities. So that way, I think it's easily accessible. The only thing is that investors will have to start an understanding that they should plan their investment as per their goals. I think that's you cannot invest into equities with the expectation that next week or next day you want to make money. If you have a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year goals, I think you can plan well on through equities and through financial assets in the form of gold also. Gold can still be a good bet for them, but in as an ETF. You also asked about the passive fund.
Yeah.
Okay. So my take on the passive fund is that passive funds will definitely grow exponentially in India, because that's how they have grown globally as well. But as of now, there are enough and more opportunities in India to generate alpha for the fund managers, because there are over 2,900 companies listed on exchange, and there are still opportunities better than the Nifty and beyond indices. So that's where I believe that alpha opportunities are there. But passive funds will also evolve. They'll also come out with the active passive strategies.
Combinations.
Yes.
There have been changes by SEBI in the passive, how many funds a fund house can put out in passive category if they already have existing ones. So there have been changes there. But you've been in the markets for so long. Over years, we've seen behavioral changes as well. So what do you think is the biggest misconception people or investors have about equity markets?
I think the post COVID, they have seen higher returns in the market. They've seen, actually, other than the last 18 months, they've seen market moving in one direction only. So somewhere the Gen Z thought that markets will just move in only linear one direction only, and they will continue to get higher returns. That's a big expectation mismatch. To some extent, that expectation mismatch have been challenged and corrected in the last 18 months, and so far they have demonstrated resilience. The misconception is that equity will grow in a linear direction.
Correct. That
Yeah.
is that is the biggest misconception. I agree. If we were to have this conversation again in next 10 years, what is the biggest structural change you expect should happen? Maybe from a macroeconomic perspective or capital markets perspective.
I think macroeconomic point of view, we will see the economic ascent for sure for India. Indian real GDP will continue to grow at 6.4%, and we will be the third largest economy by 2030 with 7.3 trillion. So not just 10 years, in 5 years we'll boom. But on the behavioral side, I see most of the investors will go for a structured financial planning rather than the ad hoc decisions on going for a particular asset class or a particular instrument. I think that's something is still missing in India, and I see that is taking off in next 5 to 10 years.
So, are we underestimating any of the risks in this structural uptick that we are talking about? You said at the start, geopolitics is not impacting India so much, but are there any other inherent risks that we are ignoring?
See, the event risk or a country level risk, you can't plan and you can't work on the same. Rest of the risks are more or less can be addressed with the active review of the portfolios. But geopolitical risks, like today, crude can go to 100 and higher also, and for short term, for a period of 6 to 18 months, can have its own impact on the certain sectors. That's something has been given, and that's where the investors need to be really more active in when it comes to their investment, and fill it, shut it doesn't work in today.
It could be volatile. We don't
Yeah,
know what will happen
yeah.
tomorrow also. But the domestic story, as you said, continues to be very strong. I want to come back on SIP. You said 31,000 crore rupees. It could reach 50,000 crore rupees and we wouldn't know it in blink of an eye. We've seen stoppages as well because of the volatility that has come by. Do you think this is also a short-term thing, because we saw at a point in time stoppage ratio was around 50, 60, 70%. And do you think the gross number that could continue to outpace the kind of outflows we saw from FIIs?
So FPI is a different story
Different story,
altogether.
yeah, I
Different
agree, yeah.
story altogether. I think the as far as SIP flows are concerned, whenever there'll be a down cycle, there'll be skepticism. Skepticism will keep coming. Then some of them will may stop SIPs also, may not increase their SIPs amounts also. So we'll have to go through these cycles. The downturns are very difficult to navigate, but whoever navigate these downturns well are the winners in the mid to long term. So that's something some of the new investors, because they are facing for the first time, will have to go through. And once this downturn cycle will be over, that's when they'll see that these are the cycles, and this is a cyclical activity, and then they continue to invest. So we will have our ups and downs in terms of flows, but I think the structural financialization of savings and equitization of savings will continue.
We are just starting, according to you, 20%
Yes.
now, but it could actually go to levels of 33% by 2033. Dheeraj, last question before we let go on this interesting conversation. Again, about your experience in the markets, what has been your biggest takeaway, biggest learning, if you would like to share, apart from the fact that asset allocation is a must, we have to look at the long-term story. Anything that stood out for you in your career?
I think the investment process is more important. Discovery, decision, execution, monitoring, reviewing the portfolio. All investors should go through this process, and they focus more on the execution. I want investors to have patience in planning and impatience in implementation.
Oh, that's a very interesting line, and
Yeah.
we'll keep that in everyone's mind when they are starting to invest or continuing their investment journey as well. Such a pleasure having you with us on the show today, Dheeraj. Thanks a lot for tuning in.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll take your leave on this conversation. Stay tuned for more news and updates.